everyone, and thank you for joining us for this year's ChefConf Online. I'm Benny Vasquez, and with me as co-facilitator, I've got Heather Payton. We have with us today Barry Crist and Corey Scobie, the two you just saw give this morning's keynotes. Barry, I think we should start with a question about desktop itself. Did the COVID, the pandemic, inspire chefs' investment in desktop this year?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Benny, and hello, Heather and Corey. Good to see you all. So it's a question I've been asked several times because it seems so timely that here in the second quarter of the year, we magically have a desktop product when remote work is at peak ever, in the history of humanity. And the answer is no. Actually, it's just good coincidence, I think, for the company. There was a couple things. If we went back a year or 18 months, we've been giving a lot of thought to edge and what various edge scenarios are. So we have customers that are using various chef technologies, for example, in remote point of sale, pushing store applications, and desktop was a variant of that. I also really want to call out our community because actually the genesis of desktop really came from Facebook and a variety of others in the community that started using this. And then our own internal IT team, and I should give out a shout out to John McCrae, also started doing work on this. So this really was born from the community. It was kind of a variation of thoughts we already given to the edge, and just very pleased to see us bringing that to the market. And we already have some very strong customers using it. So the demand for this seems quite high. Thank you. Great question. Corey, anything you'd add to that?
Just that I think today is a moment in time when IT departments are looking specifically for technologies that will help them scale their ability to do not just the server side of their automation management, but the break-fix side of the IT support side of their automation management as well. So it's a lucky coincidence that we've been working on a desktop product for 6 months and that this is the timing that we have to release it. But I really do think it's genuinely a technology and a tool that will help IT organizations scale for the next generation of the remote workforce, which is going to be challenging for sure.
That's awesome. Well, we're waiting on some more questions from the community. Corey, I was wondering, it seems like not many other DevSecOps companies are going in this direction where you're moving from offering a bunch of pieces of software to offering solutions. What made us want to go this direction, and how long have we been working on this plan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Benny. So I think we've been on an evolution at Chef for the past, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, ultimately, as we've expanded from just infrastructure automation to security and compliance and to application deployment and lifecycle management. As we've expanded the product portfolio, we've been on an evolution and moved from really that tools era. So the earliest days of automation was about high-performing IT organizations taking a simple set of tools and then doing a lot of integration work in order to make them into solutions. And what we see as automation is entering a sort of more mainstream era in enterprise IT, is that IT organizations are looking for solutions out of the box. And that's what we've been seeing as demand from our customers. And so in accordance with that, we've been building out and evolving the product portfolio to be a more solutions-oriented set where you have certainly underlying technologies that you deploy in a distribution in your organization, but ultimately it comes with all of the things that you need to be able to deploy a solution. And today we announced Chef Compliance Remediation, which is a perfect example of that. It's technology, right? We've of course got Chef Inspec under the covers. It comes with dashboards and a management console out of the box in Chef Automate, and it comes with all the content, CIS certified content that's ready to go to make that a viable solution that you can deploy at scale in your organization today. And yeah, so you'll continue to see more of that from Chef as we continue to evolve the product portfolio.
That's awesome. Barry, you got anything you want to add to that?
Nope, that was good.
Awesome. Let's go to, I'm not seeing anything come up in the community yet. So we'll go to Barry. As a remote employee, I have to say it's one of my favorite parts of Chef and working for Chef. If there's as a leader, what do you think has made successful remote working successful for Chef?
Yeah, great question, Benny. And I think another thing that we've been so fortunate for is that we had a very remote culture even before the pandemic. So for us as a internal chef, this was not a big thing, shifting everyone to remote work. I think the first thing is we adopted, gosh, it was probably 4, maybe 5 years ago, this idea of remote first culture. So even though we had an office in Seattle, we had people in various offices, London, for example, we would take that remote first idea all the way through everything we did. And a great example was all hands meetings. And it's hard to remember, it feels like so long ago when we actually had all hands meetings where people would be gathered in an office. But what we found was there was really 2 experiences. There was the experience if you were sitting in that room in Seattle, which was a totally different experience than if you were coming in remote. So we just do all meetings remote. And at first it was really awkward as a presenter because you're presenting, to a laptop as opposed to a bunch of people in a room. But we found that it really changed it. So I think just really baking in that remote first culture, which now everyone is sort of forced to do. And then, a bunch of other things, connection, just be as high frequency, comms with key people that you need to interact with. Trust, I think, is really important. We beat the mantra on alignment. I think when you're remote, it can be easier sometimes to get out of alignment with what others are doing. So just doing a lot of check-in and making sure that, everyone understands what they're working on. Jenny, I think via Brene Brown, has a great quote she uses, which is clear is kind. And what she means by that is be direct and don't be afraid to, in a professional way, confront somebody if you're unclear or you need to get feedback or whatever. And then lastly, I'd just say is, find some social connection. It's so easy for these days just to run into each other and, you don't get up and you're sitting at your desk. So, I think get up, walk around and, make sure that the Zoom or your video connections aren't just about work. Find some ways to get social connection also.
Awesome.
And I'll just add on to that. I think investment in the technologies that make it viable to be a remote workforce is really important too. And I'm not going to give a commercial to all the vendors that are our suppliers of those things. Zoom is obviously one of them as we use it right now, but there's a number of technologies that we've deployed in the organization, and being a relatively small company, it's not difficult for us to do that. But I think that investment makes it really a lot easier to be a remote employee as well. Agreed.
Good call outs. I do have a community question. I'm excited for it. I'll let you two decide which of you wants to answer it, but I have a feeling it's going to be Corey. How do you anticipate Chef Desktop will align with or integrate with existing MDM solutions, Apple end user devices, and in particular, drive business towards this architecture?
Barry, I'm going to give you the option if you want to step in.
I kind of wanted to
put her finger on the scale, but
I got some strong opinions on this one, but you take this one, Corey. That should have been some great community discussion on this exact topic.
Yeah, it's a good question, and actually, that's one of the things that's it's difficult to highlight when we talk about the product offering of Chef Desktop Management or Chef Desktop Compliance. But ultimately, under the covers, one of the things that we have done is actually integrate with a lot of the out-of-the-box MDMs for zero-touch provisioning already. So whether you're using one of the commercial MDMs or open MDM or some of the even vendor-provided things. So for example, with Apple, if you're a corporate customer of Apple and you buy corporate devices from them, you can actually have them auto-provisioned on first start, and we can integrate with that service. So that'll allow you to upload Chef Desktop Management as a part of the profile that gets provisioned on your device on first instantiation. So we've done some work on that front. I think there's a broad world of desktop management solutions or sort of MDM kind of bootstrap solutions out there. And there's probably some more integration that we need to do. And that's why we're a community, that we do that stuff together. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there is some quite a bit of built-in integration out of the box, and across the number of various different companies that have been using Chef Desktop or the earlier variants of that with Chef Infra, there's actually quite a bit of community information about how to do those integrations and how to leverage existing MDM solutions.
Awesome. Do you want to add to that, Barry?
I think Corey handled it very well. I'll say it's a desktop is an area of key investment, and there's a very variety of technologies, including getting smart about MDM, that's really important to us. So we've been paying attention to this.
That's awesome. I have another community question. Will InSpec be drawn into the desktop offering?
It is part of the desktop offering. So there's two versions of the desktop offering: Chef Desktop Management, which includes just configuration management. So ultimately Chef Infra and Automate under the covers. And then there's another premium offering called Chef Desktop Remediation. And Chef Desktop Remediation actually includes InSpec and CIS content for auto remediation against CIS benchmarks as well. So cool. There's already some integration there, and I think there's probably more work that we can do on that front as well.
Very cool. Here's an interesting one. What is the future of Chef DK?
Maybe that one's for Barry. I think it was specifically pointed towards Barry. Chef DK is obviously the underpinnings of the developer tool set. We've actually pulled the majority of Chef DK into Chef Workstation now. So Chef Workstation is our attempt to, or our plan to really consolidate the developer tooling that's required in order to be a developing practitioner in the chef world, whether it's Chef Infra, InSpec, Habitat. So we're in the process of pulling all of the various different tool sets together into one environment under Chef Workstation. I think ultimately, whether Chef DK lives on as a specific package or not, or ultimately just gets absorbed by Chef Workstation is still TBD, but we're definitely in the process of consolidating all of that stuff under Workstation.
Yeah, and here's what I'd add to this. Chef DK, I think, was one of several initiatives where we're really thinking about how to make the on-ramps into our technology easier and to make the things that you need to do easier, especially around setup. And so, Corey said it, I think that functionality we're paying attention to. I mentioned in my keynote, ease of on-ramps, especially for new practitioners, and all the things that Chef DK did is things that are important to us. It may end up living in a different place, as Corey said, Chef Workstation, but that idea and that concept, and how to both reduce the operating burden of running automation at scale and making it very easy for practitioners to get on board. Those are really front of mind things for us right now.
Awesome. Very good to hear. What? Oh, here we go. This is going to be fun. Do we have recommendations for, this one actually was aimed at Barry. So right. Do we have recommendations for best practices when developing shareable services in a distributed API-based cross-organization / company architecture?
Yeah, boy, that was
that's a long, good question.
That was a long one. There's many benefits of, there's a few benefits. I shouldn't say many. There's a few benefits of being a CEO. One of them is you can pass out work. Corey, I think that'd be a great one for you to backstop me on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Best practices. So I think one of the most difficult things to do in enterprise IT is actually collaborate across domain spaces, but also collaborate across technology boundaries as well. And so the question, there's a lot of parts to that question, but I'm going to focus in on specifically, like, how do you get a bunch of different teams to leverage shared services and to do so in a way that gives them an abstraction that allows them to be able to operate, efficiently, independently, and sort of on their own agenda. I think the biggest challenge that most organizations face on that front is actually the collaboration part of it, because once you have a stable interface, it's actually quite easy to do the technical exchange between two engineering teams, as an example. But trying to negotiate in the abstract of that stable interface is actually the hard part. And so one of the whole concepts that we have around the entire automation stack is around collaboration through code, which is that the interface on which you might interface between two teams becomes an actual artifact that defines the state of what's going to exist in the end state of your deployment. And so I think, you know, one of the best practices that I'll lean into, and there's many, but one of them that I'll lean into is the best way to get that development, that relationship working between two separate, particularly engineering organizations, is to give them a piece of code to work on. Whether it's Chef cookbook or, you know, like a habitat plan or something else altogether. As a matter of fact, I've used that technique before in the past, where there were two engineering teams that were stuck on a problem set that they were trying to solve together. One of them needed the output from the other one, and they were having a very sort of non-constructive, abstract conversation about it. And if you get them to write it down in a piece of source code, even a pseudocode, then the conversation becomes a lot easier, because you can point at facts and not assumptions about what's going to happen at the end of the day. So my strongest piece of advice is do it in code, do it in documentation, do it in actual artifacts that become the basis for your collaboration. Having a system of record of the interface between different parts of a highly distributed system is the key to getting velocity out of anyone.
Awesome. That's a great answer, actually. I love that. Are there any plans to recompile Chef server for non-x86 platforms?
Interesting, non-x86 platforms. So I'm going to read into the question a little bit. So just as an example, Amazon just released the Graviton 2, AWS just released the Graviton 2 set of instances, which are ARM64. And we've done a bunch of work to get Chef Client ready and capable for ARM64. But I'm reading into the question that somebody wants to run Chef server on ARM64 or on, I don't know, something else, maybe like.
There is a second part I could read you.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the PPCLE, so I can manage all of our AIX hosts from PPC Linux hosts on the same frame.
Yeah. I think
it's real deep.
That's a really tough question.
Yep.
I think the short answer is that, you know, with the core components of our software, our vision is actually to move away from having to compile them and support them on a whole bunch of different platforms, but instead to abstract a lot of that away as an IT operations service that you can subscribe to. So at the end of the day, in the long term, I think what we'll see is moving more of that core technology, Chef server, some of the Habitat core components, Automate, etc., move towards more of a cloud-based offering from Chef as a general statement. Specifically as it pertains to Chef server, you know, our focus is to try and reduce the amount of supported platforms so that we can actually really focus in on the capabilities and the quality of that. So it's unlikely that we're going to compile Chef server for PowerPC in the near future.
Awesome. Good to know. What else have we got? Oh,
all I'd add to that is, you know, it always depends. So if,
right,
you know, come talk to us about it and let us understand more about the use case and what you're trying to do, and we'd love to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Here's a good question that I'm sure we'll get a lot, so we'll just answer it here. Are the sources for compliance in desktop going to be open along with the other existing Chef products?
So that's yes. I mean, the short answer is that we're committed to open source software development. The source code for desktop is the foundation of the source code for desktop is Chef Infra itself. So I would argue that the majority of that is in fact open source. Many of the cookbooks have come from community development that are sort of around Chef Desktop as well. So a lot of that is already open source. And then at the end of the day with Chef compliance, you know, the foundation of it is Automate and InSpec and Habitat, all of which are open source projects as well. So a lot of that is in fact open source. The content itself we develop in a different way. And so that content will continue to be sort of managed in a different way. But one of the things that is upcoming is that for Chef customers, we are planning on launching a content delivery service, which it gives us an opportunity to consolidate the way that you get Chef notarized content across the entire ecosystem of cookbooks and Habitat componentry, and then ultimately compliance remediation content as well.
Awesome. Very cool. Actually, that actually kind of triggers a question that I had. Given the history of Chef, and when I think of remediation, I mostly think of Chef Infra, but it sounds like that's not something that's required now. If I wanted to take advantage of Chef compliance remediation, should I be continuing to use Chef Infra or no? Or
the answer is it depends, like Barry said. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the way to think about it is if what you're looking to do is to take a fleet of systems and snap them to a CIS benchmark or baseline, then Chef compliance remediation is a completely standalone offering that does not require Chef Infra. In the context of customization, extensibility, and whatnot, there are likely things that are not already baked into the compliance remediation profiles that you might want to do. And so therefore Chef Infra becomes the baseline platform that you would do those extended sort of either, whether it be configuration management tasks or other automation tasks. So the intention is not to create to make InSpec into an engine for configuration management, but the ability to marry up InSpec security and compliance evaluation resources and actual remediations in a very, very tight coupled way makes the Chef compliance remediation technology a standalone technology that could be used with Chef Infra or with any other configuration management platform.
Very cool. That is good to hear. I got a question from the community. Ad hoc jobs are still a need for enterprises that are moving to policy based. I wonder if he means policy files. Will Chef expand Chef Run to help enterprises make the transition, since you cannot flash cut to policy?
Yeah, we continue to invest in Chef Run on the workstation side. We think ad hoc is a super viable use case in a lot of scenarios. Obviously, there are limitations to ad hoc in scale and sort of deployment across large systems, which is why you really want the best of both worlds, which is the ability to run ad hoc runs and also to be able to deploy policy-based at scale for large-scale changes across the fleet. And so, the answer is we continue to invest in that, and you'll find Chef Run in Chef Workstation. So if you haven't checked it out, go download Chef Workstation.
Yeah, and I'd just add on that, just as a philosophy, I think for a long time, we weren't that stoked on ad hoc, but we also saw that there's a real place for it and people need to do that work. And so I think Corey said, which is, look, let's try to tackle best of both worlds and make sure that when folks are doing ad hoc, that we do it thoughtfully, securely, et cetera. But then ultimately, as Corey said, really think about that we can also do things at scale. So that.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention the YAML support in Chef 16, which I think makes, if you take that and add that with Chef Run, like you have a really powerful, simple tool where you can express like simple automations in YAML and be able to execute them against remote target instantly. Yes. So that's really, really powerful.
Agreed. Last one. I think this one will actually be, maybe not the last question, but I think this will be a good question for Barry. What do you see as the key opportunities, partner opportunities specifically around Chef with managed DevOps, for example?
Yeah, so first of all, I think there's several really great areas for partners to work with us. First of all, I touched this in my keynote, just reach, right? Like Chef is not big enough to get in all the places in the world and all the use cases out there for sure. I think the second thing is if you talk to whether it's enterprise customers or mid-sized customers and ask them, what are the barriers to them, let's just call it digital transformation. There's some themes come up in every single conversation. Security now frequently is a top one, hence our own investment in security. I think the number two almost always is people and skills. And so for the partners to be able to help customers on that journey, help them along, help augment or actually manage what they're doing around automation, depending on the situation, is a really, really powerful place for partners to add value. And so one that we see happening very frequently.
Very cool. I'm glad to hear that. I don't see any other new questions, so I'm going to go for Barry, Chef made a significant change to the OSS licensing model in early 2019. What observations can you share about that?
Yeah.
As a result, I guess.
Yeah, great question. So, we had done a whole bunch of hand wringing, and if you went pre-April 2019, we had much of what we did, the engines, if you will, were an open source, Habitat, Inspect, Chef Infra, but then Chef Automate was not. And it created just interesting choices and tensions inside the company, inside the community. And so we really decided after much discussion, I want to thank Corey and Adam, who had a lot to do with this. And we decided, hey, we're going to open source all the products. And then, but at the same time, our distributions are for paying customers. So that was something that was a big choice, lots of hand wringing. I just want to say the overall feedback that we've gotten from customers, from community, has been overwhelmingly positive. What I hear from people, they want Chef to be successful financially. They want us to make sure that we're around for a long, long time. And as we look at the performance over the past year, both from business model changes and new products that we've brought to market, Chef has been in a period of growth acceleration and just a very, very strong place for the company right now. I think I touched on my keynote, our best ever Q1. We're seeing new products grow over 70%. And the overall growth of the company is very strong, very positive right now. And just really happy, especially in this kind of crazy time of COVID and the pandemic, just what a great, very fortunate time for the company to be performing so strongly.
Very cool. Corey, you got anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Barry said it all. I think awesome. We're super happy with the community collaboration that's happened over the last year, and we continue down this path.
Very cool. One of the things I haven't really heard mentioned much, and I don't think I heard it at all in the keynotes, was Habitat. How is Habitat doing?
Yeah, so it's sort of like the lost son underneath the technology portfolio, because ultimately Habitat's a key part of desktop and also of Chef compliance. But really, there's a number of sessions that you'll hear later on in ChefConf, including a marquee session on app delivery, which is all about Habitat. We've done 2 major Habitat releases in the last year. I think it's really maturing to an interesting place. We see a tremendous amount of uptick in interest around Habitat for distributed applications and edge device scenarios as well. So I think Habitat is strong and continues to be really one of the industry-leading abstractions around how to free developers from and allow them to be able to package and deploy applications in a scalable way for operations. And so we're super bullish about it. We're voracious users of Habitat in our own offerings under the covers, and then ultimately we're seeing really strong uptick in the market with customers that are starting to adopt Habitat for packaging and deployment in various different scenarios, server scenarios, edge scenarios, etc. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll just underscore what Corey said. I mean, in some ways it's nice not to have to put an extra spotlight on it, partly because it's doing very well. And as Corey said, there's 2 places we see Habitat being very pervasive. First of all, we're now using this, and sometimes it's not obvious, it's under the covers, but we're using it to make the operating flow of using things like Chef or Inspect, Word, Desktop be very smooth. And the second thing, I think, as Corey said, a lot of interesting use cases. Edge is a very strong one where we see a lot of Habitat technology deployed. Also, we're seeing a lot of demand around third-party applications that it turns out patching, updating, dependency management can be very complex across large-scale enterprises. And so that's an increasingly common use case that we're seeing around Habitat.
It's almost the ham and eggs of distributed computing, isn't it, Barry?
I think it is the ham and eggs of distributed computing. Is it breakfast time for you, Corey?
It is. It's overdue. It's past breakfast.
All right.
Time. That was a shout out to our friend Eric, who loves the phrase ham and eggs. So
I think that about wraps up our time today. So now you guys can go have your breakfast. Thanks everybody for joining us. Putting together this year's ChefConf has been such a blast, and I'm excited to see people engaging with it. Make sure you stick around for the marquee sessions that are happening over the next 2 hours, and then take a look at all of our pre-recorded stuff before the community keynote and panel at 2 p.m. Pacific today. Tomorrow, too, we have the Women in Tech panel and our ChefConf concert, which are both going to be amazing. So make sure you stop by for those, and we'll want to see you there. Have a great day, and thanks, everyone.